Hello and welcome to Beyond the Ordinary. Today I'm going to be looking at the books by Laer Carroll. The two books in particular that I am looking at are the Eon's Lost Orphan, Space Orphan Book 1, and The Orphan in Near Space, which is the Space Orphans Book 2. There are further books in the series, but I haven't read them. Now, in a departure to the previous reviews, I'm going to give you my basic review about the book rather rapidly, and then I'm going into a lot more detail. So my very basic review is these books and the subsequent series are a load of rubbish, and I will rate it 3 out of 10. Now if that's what you're interested in, then you can stop watching the video now, but if you prefer to hear the rant, or as I like to call it, 10 things you shouldn't do in a science fiction novel, just watch the rest of the video. So, this is going to be fun, because I've actually written a whole list of 10 things that you shouldn't do. And Laer Carroll is brilliant as an example of the things that they have done and shouldn't have done. So let's start with number 1. Don't make your protagonist too powerful. Now, in others of my reviews I have mentioned the phrase Mary Sue, or superhero, or both, and that is any character where they are too able. They are intellectually brilliant, much better than anybody else around them. They are physically more capable than anybody else. They are incredibly attractive. They are incredibly personable. And Laer Carroll in these Orphan books has that to a T. Our Orphan arrives from some sort of pod, we don't actually know exactly what at this point, from some sort of alien civilization, we don't know what exactly at that point. She ends up on our planet, unable to speak English, completely naked, and she's looking about 13 years old. Nothing bad happens to her at all. She's immediately found by a park warden who calls in the hospital. She's taken to the hospital. The doctor who treats her works out that she's an alien rather rapidly because she's done a DNA test, and decides to be sort of a mother figure for her, even though she doesn't then adopt her. So she ends up more as an aunt figure when the girl gets adopted later on in the books. But she goes from being unable to understand the language into speaking perfect English within a couple of days or so. She's super intellectual. She's also lived through, shall we say, thousands of years. We don't actually know how long she's been alive, in a state which was sort of semi-stasis, I think, is as in she's aged a bit. We don't know how much, is only vaguely aware of it. She has an inbuilt nanite computer robot. She is, yeah, incredibly able, and there is nothing that is going to stop her doing what she wants to do. By the time she's 16, she's teaching professors at MIT how to do maths. She's that powerful. If you have got a Mary Sue character like that, what is our next don't? And that is number 2. don't make it so your protagonist has no difficulties to overcome. Laer Carroll is brilliant at this. Almost as fast as he can mention a potential difficulty happening, he has our character solving it. Why would you, as a reader, care about the character if she solves every problem as soon as it appears? When we read comic hits with superheroes, or watch them in the Marvel films or whatever, we know that there's supervillains out there. So our heroes are going to have problems. But in these books, there are no problems whatsoever. How can she have problems? She's brilliant and attractive and etc, etc. There is no way she can have a problem. The problems are sorted before it happens. And so then we get to don't number 3. If your character is already too powerful, don't make them even more powerful. So she was already the most intellectually gifted, able physically, able to mind meld with any smart trucks, planes, rockets, and any form of transport which had chips built in. She could kind of mind meld with. She could do loads and loads of things brilliantly. So by the second book, Laer Carroll is finding even more things she could do, so that she can essentially fly when she didn't need to. Why would you do this? How does it make it a better book? And now we come to number 4. Don't put in too much filler. So, one of the things we know about our protagonist is that she likes dance. And we know about this because our author tells us about this. Not once or twice, but all the flipping time. We have pages and pages and pages explaining different music dance types, how you do different dances. There's whole chapters of this. It doesn't advance the plot. It doesn't make our character any more likeable, unless you're really into that sort of stuff. It's just added filler, and it takes away from what limited story there was in the first place, trying to distract you with somebody doing some dance moves. Wow. It really, really irritates me. I wanted to tear my hair out, but what I actually did was skip parts of the book, because there they were starting talking about dancing again. Who cared? Because I didn't. Don't number 5. Don't put in too much details. Now, Laer Carroll is actually an aerospace scientist. He knows the science behind it, and has presumably worked on lots of the planes that I mentioned in the book. I don't know if he was also in the army. He might well have been, but or the navy or whatever the service he might have been in, it doesn't really matter. But when our protagonist is learning to fly, and she learns to fly 4 different types of military jet in 4 days, because why not, then he goes into minute details about the planes. There was no need to do this. There was no need to do it after the first one, when she solved it all in one day. She did everything in one day to learn to fly. By the time you got to the second one, you knew what was going to happen. By the third time you're talking about learning to fly planes, you really don't need to know what's going to happen. So you really don't need to know what type of plane she's learning now, or whether it's helicopters this time or whatever. And right down to the type of plane and in detail and how they fly. You do not need too much detail. It doesn't add to the story. It's just numbingly boring. Number 6. Don't put in too few details. Which is like the contrast to what I just said. But Laer Carroll does that as well. There's the inventions that she's coming up with, and then adds other bits as addendums, like quick throwaway lines. And I'm contrasting this particular 2 books with 4 books by Lawrence Darner's that I read just beforehand. They start with Vats and Tiona, and the other 2 are Disc and Invaders, I believe. And if you want to read 4 books which do the same story really well as opposed to really badly, I recommend them. But they explain how the developments of the different ideas work in a way that makes sense. There's interaction with other people. In this case, the author decides that there miss out chunks where the reader might actually be interested to know how the development happens. Of course, all the developments, all the ideas are basically coming from our protagonist rather than from anybody else around. But then that's because they're really badly written. And what do you expect? Okay. Number 7. Don't write in stilted prose. How do I explain this? I mean, he doesn't write it as badly as you can write books. It's not like she did this and then she did that and then she did this, but it gets close to it in places. There isn't a great flow to the story. You don't feel like the author is trying to tell the story with the prose in a way that makes it interesting for the reader, but rather throw their ideas at you and hope some will stick. It doesn't make for brilliant reading. Now, the second book, it was slightly better written than the first book. But if you've got readers, alpha readers, beta readers, editors, they should be telling you this. They should be saying, you need to rewrite this. And this doesn't happen. Number 8. Don't forget that your story is not just about one person. Yes, we have a brilliant protagonist. We have a whole bunch of people that she works with. And she basically lets them discover things by her pushing the discoveries at them occasionally. So she does all the hard work. And the rest of the characters aren't really allowed to develop. They become cardboard cutouts of people rather than real people, because the author is so focused on the heroine that the rest of the people in the cast don't matter. They're just there to play off, and as such their personalities don't really matter. She can ditch her boyfriend for months at a time because it doesn't matter, because it's not important to the story at all. That is, it makes for really bad plotting scenarios, etc. Because you've only got one person that you're meant to care about, and in the way that you've written the rest of the book, you don't care about that one person. So there's no one you give a monkeys about. Number 9. Don't forget that things take time. Now, there's a lot of authors that seem to be doing this at the moment in the science fiction world. They have an idea and they want something to happen immediately. So they're using 3D printers or They're making instant discoveries, and everything happens in a really short time period. Now, Laer Carroll isn't the only person who really forgets that things take time. There are others. Tim Ellis is a really good example, somebody who rushes everything through as fast as possible. Lawrence Darners is another person. I know I've been quite positive in the last video, but things happen really fast in his stories. But in reality, things don't happen that fast. And we can see this. I mean, let's take, for example, COVID-19, or the COVID-19 world we're looking at. If we've got our really brilliant brains working on it, which we have, because everybody in the world is working on it who is concerned with that sort of virus prevention and cure, then not only do they have to find the cure, and they've got various ideas of that which are undergoing stuff now, but they've got to test it, and everything's got to be done properly, and it takes time, which is why we're still waiting for our COVID-19 shots more than 6 months after COVID-19 has started. And this is what the authors forget. So why? Why do they do this? Nothing is instant. 3D printers only work with certain things, and you try to do other things with them, what you're making doesn't work. All sorts of other things. You can't do things instantly. There is no instant creation. And to take an idea from a theoretical stage all the way to a production stage is going to take months, but more likely years. But that doesn't happen in these books. It's really unbelievable. And my final don't is this: don't publish rubbish. If you're writing a book and your people who are reading it are coming back to you and saying this doesn't work because of this reason, this reason, this reason, or then you should be thinking, okay, I need to rewrite it. You need to have an editor who knows what they're doing look at the book and tell you what's wrong with it. Cut out stuff, put in stuff. Don't let you have Mary Sue's. Let there be an antagonist if you've got a protagonist. Let there be real problems. If they're not in there, your editor and your readers will tell you because they won't like the books. And don't listen to the people who your friends are telling you, oh yeah, that's a really good book. Because the people you should be listening to are the people who are not your friends and will tell you the truth about the stories. So, if your book's no good, rewrite it. Go back, cut out 90% of your book and rewrite it. It doesn't have to be that bad. You feel self-publishing, that doesn't mean you have to write rubbish. Those are my first 10 don'ts of writing science fiction. I've got more. I've got more about these books, but I think we'll stop there. Hope you've enjoyed this. My name's Nigel. Thank you very much.